All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second meeting of October. Before we begin the official proceedings, we have a proclamation to give out.
I'll go here. Okay.
See the response?
Good evening.
Did you see the response to your email? You might want to read that one.
And I haven't used it yet.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our meeting. Tonight, we're here to honor a long-standing organization in our community, Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros de Long Beach, Nueva York. So I'm going to read the proclamation, and you can correct me on my pronunciation. Whereas Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros is a Christian fraternity with a chapter in the city of Long Beach at St. Mary of the Isle Roman Catholic Church, and whereas their Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros is a centuries-old fraternity founded in Peru, boasting thousands of devotees worldwide, and whereas on October 24th, 2021, the Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros will celebrate its annual procession of the image of El Señor de los Milagros through the vicinity of their parish church, and whereas October is celebrated as Hispanic Heritage Month, and the city of Long Beach is proud of the contributions of the Latino community to our city, and now and therefore, the City Council and the City Manager of the City of Long Beach issue this proclamation in recognition of the cultural, fraternal, and charitable contributions of the Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros. Gracias.
Turn it around, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Are these Karen's glasses?
All right.
Yeah.
Good evening, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Council of the City of Long Beach, held Tuesday, October 19th, 2021 at 7 p.m. We'll have a roll call. Councilmember Delury.
Present.
Councilmember Mandel.
Present.
Councilmember Treston.
Here.
Vice President McGinnis.
Here.
President Bendo.
Present.
Let the record indicate the presence of City Manager Donna Gaden and Corporation Counsel Richard Berrios. We'll now have a salute to the flag.
We got our Commissioner Walsh is all spiffy looking in his uniform, so I'll ask him to lead us.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to be doing the city manager's report tonight after the resolutions, so let's move on to the agenda.
Our first item is a public hearing for item number 1, which is a resolution granting waiver of off-street parking requirements for premise 768 West Beach Street for a butcher shop.
Okay, and our representatives of the business here? And I will just say we are all happy to see this happening. So, obviously, your Sorrento's, this will be a second location, correct? This is, the first location will still be rebuilt then, right?
That's right. This will be a second location in the West End, primarily a butcher shop and deli.
Okay, so when you say deli, also sandwiches and things like that, or?
Sandwiches, Italian specialties, some cheese, possibly our homemade cookies.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Going to be doing pizza out of there, too?
I'm sorry?
Going to be doing pizza out of that one?
I might. There will not be wood burning for a
Okay.
couple.
I saw in the paperwork you anticipate about 6 employees?
That's right.
Okay. And 6 days a week? Looked like you were going to be closed Monday, right?
Correct. Similar hours of operation.
All right. And hours, you're looking at about 9 to 7:30, right?
That's right.
All right. Just making sure that everything matches the paperwork. Deliveries look like 4 to 5 per month, about 15 minutes.
That's right.
All right. Any questions from the council? All right. Any questions from the public? All right. Let's close the hearing, and since you're here, so we don't have to make you wait around, we'll vote on it now.
So item 1 is a resolution granting waiver of off-street parking requirements for premise 768 West Beach Street, street floor for a butcher shop. Who introduce and move the adoption of this item?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delory.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Looking forward to it, yes.
Okay. Item passes.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, moving on to the calendar. Item 2 is a resolution to amend Resolution Number 110 of 21.
Okay. Who's speaking on? Ina, that's going to be you?
Good evening. Is the mic on? Yeah?
No.
No. How about now? Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so that resolution is to amend the resolution that the City Council approved a couple of months ago. City is purchasing and financing through the lease 2 trucks, Tahoes, for the fire department. I believe that the supply chain issues that are now global, they impacted the timing of delivery of the trucks, and by the time that the trucks were available, the rates that were offered to us by the community leasing expired. Once they expired, we went back to the drawing board and actually tried with the other financing institutions to see if there would be a better rate than what they had proposed as a new rate, but actually it was still, dealing with the community leasing, still was the most logical way to go, and therefore you have here this new proposal. So it changed from the original one. The rate changed, obviously, the annual payments changed, and also the number of payments that the city will be making changed from 7 years to 5 years.
All right, and just to clarify, even though we're going from 7 years to 5 years, we're still paying the same amount.
Well, the
Correct.
principal is the same, yes.
Right.
But what we're going to pay actually in total payments is actually going to be less than what we would have paid under the original scenario because we're borrowing for a shorter period of time.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any other
I have a
questions from
question.
the council? Go ahead, Mike.
John?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Oh.
Okay.
Are the vehicles ready to be delivered?
I believe that they are.
Okay, and this resolution is good for 30 days?
The resolution is good for forever. The resolution is good forever. The rate that we were offered was good for the 30 days. And I confirmed with the leasing company, with the community leasing, that the rate will be good through tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions from the council? All right. Hearing none. Any from the public? Okay, Mr. Lester.
You're not going to clean it, Mike?
The next time.
Oh, okay. She's clean, I'm sure. Does it work? Okay. I guess back in July 6th, when we last brought this up, there were a lot of questions, and it's very confusing. It says back then it was commencing August 2022, and now it's commencing July 2022. What does that mean, commencing? Until July. But we're paying interest in the meantime on that money. The interest accrues, and the first payment is due in July, yet it's a yearly payment, but we're not getting a year's worth of use of the money. Is that correct?
What do you mean by the use of the money?
In other words, we're past July. We're almost in November. So if we're paying starting in by July 2022, we're paying for a full year. We're paying the $25,000. And okay. So, that's something that it doesn't, I can't quite understand. I understand we ended up with the 5-year because we couldn't get the same rate, the 2.99 that we had for the 7-year. So we're paying more money, but not overall because we have less interest. I guess one of the biggest questions is it says funds are available in the account 3410 55509 54509. We have $50,000 in that account. Why would we borrow? Well, we're not borrowing. Yes, we are borrowing. We're paying money. We're paying interest on money when we have $50,000 of that $116,000 in the account. That's a question too. The other thing is these Tahoes normally go on the state rate for $44,000. Now I understand with the equipment they're now $58,000, but we talked about the equipment and we said we were not transferring the equipment from the old vehicles, and we're not sure what we're doing with that equipment, and if they have to be repurposed, we're going to have to take the lights and stuff off. But for $14,000, was there any way we could have saved some of that? Or were these vehicles, at a certain point, I understood these vehicles were already pre-made, but now I understand that they weren't there, and that because of the supply chain, they weren't there. So that's, something that I don't understand. The other thing is Sam Pinto had come up, and he had said, why aren't we bonding the same way we do for the police vehicles? And at that point, Ms. Gaydon had said, well, we're trying to get away from that bonding for those type of things unless it's building. But he said, but we're doing it for the police vehicles, and she said she was going to look into that, and we never really got an answer on that. So those are my questions.
A lot. I'll try. I don't know if I remember them all.
help you.
So the first question, you said that we're not getting the year's worth of money. These are capital leases, so we're going to own these vehicles at the end. So that's not the way to look at it. It's not like you lease a vehicle where you're paying whatever monthly payments, or and then like in a regular consumer lease, right? You pay it, and then at the end it goes back to the leasing company. That's not how it works. We're gonna have
You're basically financing it through lease.
we are financing it through the leasing company, so that's how they offer to structure that lease.
So they charge us interest even though we don't have the money. They're charging us full year's interest even though we don't have the money yet.
No, that's not how it works.
That's the $25,000 we're paying in July.
Right, but that's an annualized amount, right? So we are going to pay in July for the amount for $116,000 that we are borrowing to pay for the 2 cars.
That's what I said, but we're not getting that money in July.
All right, let's simplify. Ina, the first payment's July 2022,
Yes.
correct? When do we get the vehicles?
That's right.
We're probably going to get vehicles sometimes in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so we're getting the vehicles in 2021, but we don't start paying for them until 2022. So
right.
that's the first thing to clarify.
Yes.
So we're basically driving them around for 6 months, I'm sorry, not 6, yeah, for about 6 or 7 months, we'll be driving these vehicles around without having to pay for them.
That's correct.
That's one. Number two,
John, we're paying interest.
number two,
No,
Roy, your 3 minutes is up. Number two, we're paying less on this than the previous one. I mean,
Yes.
you came up and you said, well, we're paying more, but we're really paying less. We're paying less because we're financing it over 5 years. It's a slightly higher interest rate, but because it's financed for 2 less years, this taxpayers are saving money. This is a good thing.
I think, Ina,
And one other thing, sorry, Karen, about your thing about the police vehicles, I think you asked about why we're still bonding for those. That was the other thing, is we're trying to operationalize in the budget things that have been in the capital budget before. That's a process. As we can build things into the budget that we can pay for them, so we don't keep borrowing for things that should be routine operational expenses. So this is one of those things where we're trying to operationalize it, sorry. I'm getting stumbling there. So we're trying to pay for this out of the operating budget through the lease rather than having to borrow and add to our debt to do it. And
Also in support of that, and to clarify a little bit more, the leasing is not available to the police department because the police department vehicles run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They now take a look at the hours run on the motor, and they count that against the warranty. So the police vehicles are much more expensive to lease through this and much higher interest rate, so therefore it was smarter to do it through a capital project. It saved the city money.
Any more questions? Okay, what about the equipment?
Do
The
you-
$14,000 we're paying for the equipment, the lights and stuff?
Yeah, I have some help here from Scott Cammons that's really done his way.
Good evening. The 2 vehicles that are going to be surplus, maybe repurposed, are 17, 18 years old. So is the equipment on those. They're outdated. Most of it doesn't work, and most of the lights don't work. The radios, if they're still serviceable, we repurpose our radios. So we repurpose as much as we can. But a light bar on a vehicle that's 17 years old is very outdated, not the most technology, not the brightest, not even the safest. So that is new, but we repurpose as much as we can from these vehicles.
Was any of this repurposed? Because my understanding was that none of this vehicle has any repurpose. It's all brand new equipment, everything
Well, the vehicles come in with new lights, new sirens, that's all outdated. Like I said, we repurpose the radios that come out of it if they are serviceable and are still supported by the manufacturer, those get repurposed. Flashlights, fire equipment, that all gets repurposed. Really, it's the vehicle equipment that comes with the deal that we purchase the vehicles with, the lights, the sirens, but all the other equipment is moved from one car to the other. All the firefighting gear, fire extinguishers, tools, none of that comes with the new vehicle. That's all moved from the existing vehicle over.
So, in other words, we didn't save any in this particular case. It's basically new stuff. 14,000 is basically new stuff.
Right, that includes the lettering on the vehicle, that includes the console, any upfitting for the lights, interior lights, things that the vehicles need to have additional equipment to meet the needs of the fire department.
And now, yes, about the 50,000 we have in the account.
Yes, we have $50,000 budgeted in the account, but we couldn't get better rates if we were to start paying for them.
It's okay.
If we were to start paying for them now, so it makes more sense from the financial standpoint to get a lease that where the payments are starting in July or next fiscal year.
So if we prepaid,
If
in other words, if we bought
Right.
116,000, if we gave them 50,000, we couldn't get a better deal?
No, you would. Well, you would, Roy. Yeah. If
I
you
don't
pay,
know
if you
what
pay
kind
in
of a
advance,
deal
All
we
right,
would have gotten.
Look, this is, we're way past the 3 minutes. This is not the discussion forum.
Okay.
So we could stick around after the meeting and
I understand.
hash this out.
I was just about to say that maybe, Ina, you could provide the council or the public with a primer on capital lease financing and the time value of money. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to item 3.
Item 3 is a resolution to schedule the first regular council meeting of November for Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021.
All right, and that's just moving it because the next scheduled meeting would be on Election Day, and we don't want to do a city council meeting on Election Day, so we're going to move it to the day after. Any questions from the council members on that? Any questions from the public? All right, seeing
Okay.
none.
On to the voting. Item 1 has been voted on already. Item 2 is a resolution to amend Resolution 110 of 21. You introduce and move the adoption of this item?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delury.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
And item 3 is a resolution to schedule the first regular council meeting of November for Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. Introduce and move the adoption of this item.
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delury.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes. Okay, and before we go on to close the meeting, go on to good and welfare, we're going to do the city manager's report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The first item I wanted to say was this past Saturday, there was a cancer walk, and it was by 3 young ladies, or actually 3 sisters. I believe they were all less than 30 years old, and all 3 sisters at some point had cancer. So they had a walk called We Fight Like Girls Cancer Walk, and I was out there to support them and to show the support from the city. And then also on Saturday, the Long Beach High School had their Wall of Fame, and they honored all of the first responders from the city of Long Beach, and I want to say thank you. And myself and Councilmember Delory were there to see them get the award and have the plaque hung on the Wall of Fame. Tonight, my entire report will be done by presentations by different department heads, and they're going to talk about things that we have done over the last 18 months. And we're going to start with the... Yes. Sure.
The 2021 inductees were James Bernhardt, Irene Doherty, the Long Beach First Responders, that's all. Heather McAdam Pomilio, Michael Scuden, and David Taylor. Thank you, Donna.
Yes. So our first presentation should be police. Who's this? All the first lights are the same for all of them.
Sorry.
And so if the council wants to go and sit in the audience, they can. Yeah.
Whatever.
You guys want to sit down here?
Yeah. Wednesday night. I just want to, come on up, sir. We want to acknowledge that this coming Wednesday night, we have a company that has, and Ingle Berman built it. We are being honored with a playhouse. Correct. For handicap, disabled, or special needs. And I wanted to have
Jim Lorenzo.
Come up, Mr. Lorenzo. See, I wanted to make sure I had it right. Mr. Lorenzo, I wanted to say to you, thank you on behalf of the city of Long Beach for donating this playhouse. We will be picking it up, or it will be presented to us on Thursday night, and then it will be delivered, and then it will be put in place. Did you want to say a couple of things real quick?
Sure. Thank you for having me. As far as the donations is concerned, it's part of the Engel Berman Group, Long Island Builders Cares Group. I'm a resident here in Long Beach, and trying to do things and give back to the community is something that we've always been part of. I've always been part of. I don't know if Joe Brandt had actually years ago invited me to come and scare the kids with a haunted house that we donated for many, many years. And so it's nice to be part of the community and to give back, and it's nice to have new folks that are coming in with this new project to also feel the same way. You know, so on Friday at 1 o'clock, we're going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony at Clark Street Park, and everyone here is invited, and it's should be a nice thing for every park. And part of what the Long Island Builders wants to do is get every park in the state to have something for children with special needs, so that they feel like they're part of. Anytime we've produced an event and we've worked with Joe, we make sure that we're completely ADA compliant, and it's just the right thing to do. So thank you for having me, and have a great meeting.
And for the council, you all accepted this gift earlier in the year. It's now being delivered. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Commissioner of Police Ron Walsh. Going to walk through a presentation for the accomplishments of the police department since my arrival in February. It's not for the last 18 months. These are the ones that we worked on since then. So next slide. So the first thing that we did when I arrived is we evaluated all of our posts and all of our assignments that were taking place on the post, which is we looked at the post boundaries, the number of calls for service on each post boundary, the types of calls for service on those post boundaries, as well as the seriousness of the events that were taking place and the types of crime. And we decided that it would be best to realign the city so that the officers would be able to be more responsive, that more like type of crimes were taking place on particular posts, and that as the officers became more and more familiar, they would be able to actually deal with these situations on their post more readily and with more familiarity. Additionally, as part of this initiative, we created an electronic car book. So all the officers in their car now have the ability to see the conditions on their post, see what other officers, what actions other officers actually take place on the post, and so that they can be up to date and understand what's actually happening on a particular post at any particular given time. It's actually working quite well. Next slide, please. So it all leads into a data-driven, intelligence-led policing model. The first thing is real-time analysis. We look at our crimes and we look at our manpower as it's taking place to see where we are, what's actually happening in the city, and then adjust our approach to things as that's happening. We do things called directed patrols. Our directed patrols are where we actually tell officers to be in a particular place at a given time or do certain things throughout the day. We have community engagement directed patrols where we have officers that at least twice per tour have to walk through the Channel Park houses, have to visit a house of worship, things of this nature, have to address particular conditions that we've noticed, which then leads into our focus deterrence, which is in conjunction with the geographic policing model and the officers on their steady posts. We actually look at our crime data and when things are actually occurring. So in a way, you put a cop on a dot. You know that a crime is probably going to occur in this particular area at this particular time. We also use that, though, our focus deterrence for other things. For example, when I first got here, there was a lot of graffiti around the city, but we hadn't really taken any case reports. Nobody complained about it. We did a survey of the entire city. We found every piece of graffiti that was out there, and we really haven't. That person hasn't been doing it as much. I hope because we were out there kind of finding where these things were happening and targeting and patrolling those locations where it was taking place. We're also doing the same thing with our homeless in this regard, where we have the CN Guidance and Counseling Mobile Recovery Vehicle that comes down and works with our homeless people to give them psychological services as well as medical review and things of that nature. We also used it for the Ocean Beach Park over the summer, where we targeted our officers to write summonses for those violations that were habitually occurring and really try to reduce those things from happening. This year we wrote 1,650 summonses on the Ocean Beach Park alone, which is the highest number ever, and we're told that we had people were much more satisfied with that. We also used it for our licensed premises down in the West End and throughout the city. We use it for special events for that too. Where we increased our enforcement efforts to make sure the licensed premises were actually following the rules during Irish Day and things like that. And also, just in general, an increase in focus on quality of life conditions down in the West End, where we got a lot of very positive response from people who live down there and saw that the police were addressing those issues. Next slide, please. This slide shows our activity levels with regard to enforcement. The first one, you see the large graph there. We had 13,099 parking summonses issued through the end of September of this year. For all of 2020, we had 7,079. For all of 2020, we had 13,200. For all of 19, we had 13,200. So we're well ahead of the game with regard to how we're handling parking conditions. Same thing with regard to our VTL violations. We're about even with 19, which is the last real year that people were out next to this year. 2020 was the aberration year where people were inside and there wasn't a lot of things to really do when you're a criminal because everybody was home and you couldn't victimize people because there was nobody on the street as much. So also the same thing with our impounds. Our impounds are running on 2019 levels as opposed to 2020 levels, and we are substantially above where we were in 2020 as well. Next slide, please. Which leads us into our crime statistics. In 2019 was, like, again, the last real year we could compare ourselves to. So the graph that you see in front of you shows Part 1 and Part 2 crime. Part 1 is the most serious crime. Part 2 is less serious crime. Overall, in the city of Long Beach, compared to 2019, we are 19% down in Part 1 crime and 38% down in Part 2 crime, with an overall drop in crime rate of 34%. So it's a dramatic drop in the amount of total crime that we're having in the city. Now, I would like to try and keep it at 2020 levels, but the fact remains is as people come out and they're out and about and they're parking their cars and they're going to work and they're not working from home as much, it's greater opportunity for people to commit crime. And we're going to see an increase. Our goal here is that it never reaches 19 levels again, which is what we're trying to do, which, by the way, was dramatically low from 18 and 17, which is when crime across the country was actually dropping. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to switch to the financial health of the police department. What you're looking at on the green line there is the total number of hours that the Long Beach Police Department expended for overtime. And it's below 19 and it's below 20. So we've done a very good job thus far in the year actually reducing the number of hours of overtime. I'll talk about expenses in the next slide. We are 1,200 in essence hours under 2020 hours in 21, and we are 2,470 hours below 2019's hours. So we're more effectively managing the way our officers are utilized in the cars to try and curtail expenses. It also goes much along the lines of we were budgeted for 68 members this year, which is 2 more than last year, and we replaced people as they left. There was no 2 and 3 and 4 month gap, which caused blanks in our schedule, which caused us to expend more overtime. Next slide, please. So this is our dollars and what we're actually dealing with. Because we were up in front and been able to control the number of officers much more tightly and keep ourselves in front of it, and we added 2 officers, we were able to reduce our overtime expenditures thus far this year. This is through September. We're $160,000 less than we spent in 2020, which was an off year. We're $280,715 less than we were in 2019. So it's showing that that our efforts are working, and that it's also a product of less expensive labor costs. New officers come in, and they come in at $56,000 a year with an overtime rate of only $45 per hour. Our overtime rate has dropped from $102 an hour to $83 an hour. It's becoming less expensive for our officers to be paid to work extra hours. The other thing there that is on this is called ECAB. ECAB is the Early Case Assessment Bureau by the District Attorney's Office. When we make an arrest, we have to work with the District Attorney's Office to come up with charges. There were, at times, dramatic delays in that process. I instituted an ECAB tracking form. We know when they get sent the information. We know when we get our first return back from them. We know when we get finalized. And if that's more than 30 minutes is what we give them, at an hour, I tell my officers, move on with your charges, you're professionals. They can change the charges either at arraignment, with the prosecutor's information, or at the time of indictment and grand jury. So that seems to be working well in reducing some of our overtime as well. Next slide, please. Our new booting policy came into effect this year in September. It's actually working very well. Our first boot came out about 2 or 3 days after the booting policy was put in place. The way our very first boot was a person with 20 summonses. They paid the fine, reduced fine, but they paid the fine nonetheless, so we collected revenue we weren't seeing. And we also had a $120 administrative fee for that, as well as a $250 boot removal fee. That covers the cost of the boot removal program. So we're actually getting people to start to pay attention and pay their summonses instead of just ignoring them ad infinitum until their cars get impounded. This also gives them the opportunity to get their car back much quicker than if the car was actually impounded. Right now, we've issued about 10 to 12 boots. We had 3 put out yesterday, another one today, so the program is moving in the right direction. Next slide. Our IT improvements. This slide has a lot of information on it that I'm going to be saying. When I got here, our computers weren't working very well in the cars. Most of them were down. They weren't connecting. I reassigned some staff in the police department who had IT knowledge and knew how to do this. All of the computers in our cars are now working. We have pilot programs working with 2 of our vendors for different modems in the car, for give us greater functionality. And look, you need the tools in the car to be able to go out and do effective police work. This is a major portion of what we do and what we need. We do have aging equipment, and in the 2022 capital project, we've addressed some of those issues. For now, we're actually doing quite well. The electronic car book I spoke about, but we also instituted an electronic activity report. Because of the disparity that we have actually in our officers and how the information is done, like we have handwritten parking tickets, we have parking tickets that are done by handhelds, we have computer-issued VTL summonses, we have ones that are done by handheld. We needed to find a way to get all this information together and have accurate data. We instituted an electronic activity reporting that now gives us up-to-the-minute information on what our officers are doing, when they're doing it, and how it's taking place. We're using a tool called Microsoft Business Intelligence. What that tool actually is a Microsoft software product that attaches to all of our disparate inventory of software products, is able to scrape the data out and actually give us the ability to look at our overtime, literally as it's happening. We know how much our overtime we're spending, why is there a spike, why is this happening. We know our use of sick, vacation, our personal time, calls for service, the types of calls that we're experiencing. We're also able to look at how many of directed patrols we have out there at any given time. Are the officers doing what they're supposed to be doing coming out of our RMS system? We're also looking now to kind of tailor that down into our RMS system. We're working with that vendor to get the data for crime statistics, so we have instantaneous look at that as well. Upgrades to the closed-circuit televisions. All the Boardwalk cameras are now up and running. We are working on bringing the railroad cameras actually into the police department as we speak. And in 2022, we've allocated funds so that all of the cameras around the city are brought into the police department, shown up so that they are monitored by the inside police officers and dispatchers, so that we can have an idea of what's going on in the city right from where we're sitting, as opposed to it being in disparate locations. The 800 megahertz radio system, well, the 500 megahertz radio system that we use gets interference, especially during the summer months, what's called tropospheric ducting. We work with the county to get radios that are put in every one of our cars, so that when our radios go out, we switch over to the 800 megahertz radio, and we're still able to communicate for emergency calls for service. And the Dispatch Central Communications Center, we received a grant opportunity from Nassau County, thanks to Denise Ford, to pay for new equipment for a dispatch center, and we are working on putting that together in the year of 2022. Next slide, please. I'm going fast because I have people going after me, and I want you to be able to go home tonight. Q-Hit. So you'll recall in July where we asked for money to get into a pilot program, and this was so that this company is a survey company that sends out surveys to all people who call for service from the police department. And these are our results since August 1st. We have a 51% return rate. We're told that is very high. Generally speaking, across the country, it's around 30 to 35%, with a very high return rate on our surveys. Our dispatchers have an 87.5% satisfaction rating. Our police officers have an 85% satisfaction rating, and the department as a whole has an 86.4% satisfaction rating. So whatever we're doing in the police department right now, the public likes it. So that we feel very good about that. It's a compliment to the officers and to the way the department is running right now. Next slide, please. We focus a lot on community outreach initiatives. The very top one there is Law Enforcement Exploring. We just did a recruitment at the high school with Nassau County. We have our first 4 Law Enforcement Exploring recruits, and we're going to be able to start that program up more in earnest. We have 1 advisor trained, you need 2, so we're working on getting our second advisor. Our community outreach development, we really work very hard to actually go out into the community with our cops now, get out of the cars. We're in the MLK Center. We're in our houses of worship. We're over in the rec center. We're up on the beach. We stop in parks, and we're really trying to engage with the community at the level of the community is out there in the public. Instead of them having to come to us, we're going to them to create more positive engagement strategies. We're also focusing on conflict resolutions. Instead of going to a call for service where people are arguing and we just take a report, we're trying to develop some level of common ground and focus in on establishing better relations between people to try and reduce the calls for service. Also, the Commissioner's Council on Police Reform that was established for the Executive Order 203 We decided to continue that. It was supposed to sunset in February. We've had several meetings since our reform plan was put up at state. We developed a handout that went out on National Night Out. We've had other meetings to talk about where we're doing and how the police department is doing in instituting its police reform. Next slide, please. The entire police department has gone out, and the executive staff, and met with every single business across the entire city so that they had a face with a name and a phone number. I gave my card to everybody, so did the other members of the executive staff. I know Donna Gaden was involved with this on several times, walking with us, engaging with the community, and we really worked very hard to make sure that the community felt as if we had their best interests at heart and had a place to turn, not just a phone number to call, but someone that they knew. Next slide, please. Our National Night Out this year was a huge success. I'm told it was probably the most well-attended ever. I don't know, I haven't been here before, but I was very pleased to see the people that showed up. The PBA, the Commanding Officers Association, the CSEA, they were all there. They cooked the food, they manned the cars and stuff like that, and demonstrated our equipment to the kids and the adults that wanted to see it. One of the largest cross-sections of community outreach groups I think that we have ever had. We had people, lemonade, face painting, we had the DA's office there, we had mounted, we had the Latinos associations, basically everybody from everywhere in the city was there. It was really a great event to see African-American people with Caucasian people, with Asian people, with Latino people, everybody just kind of hanging out and having a good time at an event that shows we're standing up against crime. It was really a very nice event. Next slide, please. So problem-oriented policing is the philosophy that we're trying to drive through the department at this point, which is really designed to systematically alleviate the problems that we have, as opposed to just showing up for a call for service and taking a report. We're trying to discover what the reason is for the problem that we have and trying to work with people to come up with some solutions. We're trying to make it a more proactive approach instead of a reactive approach. And our goal would be in 2022 to try and stand up a problem-oriented policing unit. Next slide, please. One of the things that we also offered with problem-oriented policing is CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, where we talk with area businesses and even people building a house about how do you prevent or deter crime from happening around your home or business by the way your property is designed, whether it be windows or lighting, something as simple as the way the bushes are laid out close to the house. So you know you should really be putting thorny bushes close to the house so people don't climb through your windows, they get stuck by sticker bushes and want to go home. Things as simple as that, but there's obviously more science to it behind just that. Next slide. Police training. All 100% of the police department went to training at the Nassau County Police Department to get the new reform training. They learned new de-escalation techniques, which is an ongoing and developing science. One thing that works today may not work with this particular individual or that individual, so it's a constant developing science. They learned about procedural justice, systemic racial bias, as well as racial justice in policing, so that our officers learn techniques and learn the thought process of slowing themselves down and being able to look at their actions and ensure that they're not reacting to something in a way that's inappropriate. Next slide. New policies and procedures. We upgraded our use of force policy. We banned chokeholds. We now have a form that actually you must fill out on every use of force that is looked at from every level of supervision throughout the police department to ensure you followed policy, procedure, the law, and you were reasonable and necessary in your use of force. We created a new complaint tracking where 100%, if you call the police department and you want to make a complaint, you're given the form gets filled out, you get a tracking number, and nobody's turned away in any way, shape, or form who wants to make a complaint against the police department. We have next slide. We have a new crowd control policy that was modeled after the International Association of Chiefs of Police and with the input of other organizations around the county so that we have fairness and equity and allowing people to have their demonstrations while keeping the city safe and our property safe. We have new emergency response plans. We have a new coastal storm plan. We have a new pandemic plan. And we also have a new dignitary protection plan. We also have other model policies. One, dedication to duty. If any officer sees any officer or knows of any officer that violates a rule, a policy, procedure, or the law, they are duty-bound to report it, or they will be subject to discipline themselves. Mental aided policy, we now work with Nassau County's MCOTS, which is the Mental Crisis Intervention Team, so that we get some services to the people who actually need them, who are experiencing mental problems. Next slide. As far as department diversity goes, working very hard to try and diversify the department. We're actually coming up with a plan now to open up the Long Beach Police Department to lateral transfers of police officers from around New York State to help diversify our candidate pool. We're also, for the first time, we have 11 females in the department. The prior high was 5. We have our very first female sergeant in the police department and our first and second Hispanic sergeants as well. So we're working very hard to try and diversify the way the department looks to the community. Next slide. Our last slide here is, in order to have a police department that functions well, you have to make sure that you're taking care of the mental health and the health of your officers. We hired a brand new department surgeon who's very well received by the members of the department, doing a great job. We're developing, in coordination with our local clergy and a state organization, a new chaplaincy program for the entire city. Not only for the police officers when they experience crisis, but also for the community. We're trying to be able to have a chaplaincy program that can go out into the community that works in a crisis, before, during, and after crises, to make it a more smooth life, if you will, when bad things happen. This kind of concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I would be more than happy to ask. Sorry I went so fast. I don't know how long I took. Hopefully it was bad. Anybody have any questions? Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next is, that's you, Joe.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Joe Fabrizio. I'm the Commissioner of Public Works. Before I get started, I just wanted to thank the City Manager and the City Council for having the faith in me to take the reins as Commissioner of Public Works. I really do thank you very much. And I also want to commend the City Manager and the City Council, because all the projects I'm going to discuss tonight were all done under your tenure and guidance. So, good job, and thank you for working with me to get them done. That being said, this is the Department of Public Works Project Progress Report. Next slide, please. I'm going to start with Lifeguard Headquarters. This was and comfort stations at New York Avenue and Neptune Boulevard. The intent was to replace structures that were destroyed as a result of Hurricane Sandy. On the left, you see our old Lifeguard Headquarters. That is now somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, unfortunately. Our new one is on the right there. The project was done by construction consultants of Long Island. The price was $3,268,000. Next slide, please. This is a continuation of the Lifeguard Headquarters project. These are the comfort stations at Neptune and New York Avenue. Neptune is on the left on the bottom, the new one. On the right is the new one at New York Avenue. And you can see on the top left, it's hard to see, but that was the destruction that was caused by Superstorm Sandy. Next slide, please. Boyd Street reconstruction. The scope of this work included complete reconstruction, including new sanitary sewers, water mains, storm drains, curbs, sidewalks, concrete gutters, asphalt composite road, and lighting. On the left is a before photo of Boyd Street. It was probably arguably the worst streets in Long Beach. The after photo is on the right. Just to note that this was designed in-house by my staff, and the work was done by Thomas Novelli Contracting Corp. At a cost of $888,660. Next slide, please. The Long Island Railroad / City Parking Garage. The scope was to remove and replace support angles, repair joints and cracks, apply application of an epoxy surface, striping, and replacement of fire suppression system. Anybody who remembers driving up on that parking garage remembers that the slabs would rock back and forth. That is now repaired. On the left is a photo of the old parking garage. On the right is a photo of how it looks today. The total cost was $746,000, and the contractor was called Walker Construction. Next slide, please. Edwards Rehabilitation, south of Park to the Boardwalk. The scope was the installation of new storm sewer collection system. Curbs, sidewalks, expanded set of walls for traffic calming, bike lanes, ADA ramps, and crosswalks. On the left, you see a before picture of what Edwards previously looked like. There was no drainage system on the road at all. We've installed a complete subsurface drainage system, and on the right is what it looks like today. I'm proud to report that we've had several significant rainstorms. There's not a drop of water on that street anymore, so it came out really great. The contractor was Allen Industries. The total cost was $2,066,000, and this was actually funded partially through a New York State Department of Transportation grant. Next slide, please. The North Shore Bulkhead project. The scope of this project was to replace deteriorated city bulkhead with new fiberglass reinforced plastic bulkhead. The new bulkhead installed was to the base flood elevation, which is 9 or 10 NAVD, and it provides flood protection from the 100-year storm and protects against erosion as well. The 3 photos there are from each portion of the project: West Bay Drive before and after, the canals Doyle and Heron before and after, and the West End streets before and after. The contractor was Woodstock Construction Corp. The cost was $14,500,000, and this was 100% funded through the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery. Next slide, please. Emergency sewer repairs, Park between Grand to New York and Lindell from Park to Walnut. These were replacement of collapsed sanitary sewer mains with funds from the capital budget. On the left was a collapse that occurred on Park between Grand and New York. On the right is a collapse that occurred on Lindell between Park and Walnut. The contractor that repaired them was Thomas Novelli Contracting Corp. Next slide, please. LED lighting project. The scope was to replace remaining induction fixtures, which were 200-watt and 150-watt induction fixtures, with energy-efficient LED lights. Replacement LED fixtures wattages range from 40 to 80. So basically, we're replacing 200-watt and 150-watt induction fixtures with low wattage 40-watt and 80-watt LED fixtures. The total cost of the project was $489,644. The contractor was Wellsback Electric Corp of Long Island. Next slide, please. Standpipe demolition. The scope of this was to remove the existing 1.0 million-gallon standpipe, which was a water storage tank, that was over 100 years old. It was erected circa 1910. The total cost of the project was $470,618. The contractor was Wargo Construction. On the left is a photo of the standpipe. On the right is the vacant lot that used to house that water tower. Left, please. The next, please. The hockey rink. There was a collaborative effort to rehabilitate the city's roller hockey rink. City forces removed the existing deteriorated tile surface, repaired the subgrade, and Castle Industries poured state-of-the-art concrete surface. On the left is the before picture. On the right is in progress as they were doing construction. The contractor was Castle Industries. The total cost was $131,000. Next slide, please. This is one of my favorite projects, I have to say. And I think, everybody, when I look at these elevators, I always think of life is like a box of chocolate. You don't know what you're going to get. When you used to come into City Hall, you didn't know if you were going to have one elevator working, 2 elevators working, what floor it was going to stop at, if it was going to stop, where you're going to get stuck. So on the left was what it looked like before. I'm sure everybody remembers. On the right is the new elevator, new cab. All the innards were replaced. So the total cost was $380,000, and the contractor was Alliance Elevator. And again, it's not as sexy as some of the other projects, but I think everybody probably appreciates it. Okay, next slide, please. Boardwalk bicycle lanes. This is it's a pilot project that we just did. Our beach maintenance department, under the direction of the city's director of operations, Tommy Canner, by the way, he's not here today, but I was hoping to embarrass him, designed and applied bicycle stanchions on the boardwalk at Edwards Boulevard and National. It's widely accepted. It's going to be applied to the entire boardwalk. Everybody knows this has been a pretty big problem. The Ippy wood, we're unable to put stripes on it because it doesn't hold the paint. I think we might have a solution here. It's been pretty widely accepted and hasn't been many complaints. Next slide, please. Sand screen installation north side Ladoon. Again, the city's beach maintenance department, under the direction of city's director of operations, is erecting a sand screen paralleling the north side of the dune along the entire 2.25-mile boardwalk to prevent the dune from overtaking the maintenance area. The work's being performed by the city's skilled in-house workforce. On the left is the actual sand screen that they're building. On the right is the area where it hasn't been installed yet. the main point of this project is to prevent the dune from overtaking the landscape, the maintenance area that we currently have. Next slide, please. I wanted to put this one in here because I know over the summer it was a pretty big deal that we didn't have air conditioning, and there was a lot of talk about the part that we needed. What was the part? Where was it coming from? So I thought it was important to show a picture of the part, the $98,000 part that was actually installed. You can see it's quite large. It came from Wisconsin, and it was custom. So again, the total cost was $98,000, and the contractor was Carrier. Next slide, please. I'm not going to get into all the overlays, but we do an annual asphalt overlay program. Just recently, actually last week, we completed the ones on the right, which was Pennsylvania Park to Beach, New Hampshire Park to Beach, and Pacific Boulevard, east and west side, Broadway to Shore Road. On the bottom is a before and after picture of a typical overlaid road. Next slide, please. The scope was to replace the pool liner replacement. The scope was to replace the deteriorated pool liner with new. We repaired the balcony wall, and it was a collaborative effort with city personnel to paint the facility, including pool gutters and the interior. On the left is a before picture of the pool. You can see there's a rip in the liner. On the right is what it looks like today. I think it looks fantastic. We've gotten nothing but kudos from the public. Next slide. Oh, and the contractor was Renesis. I'm just going to take a quick drink before I go to the next portion. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, these are projects that are in progress. They're probably going to be done in the next probably year to 18 months. I'm going to start with our new water tower. Our intent is to install a new 1.25 million gallon composite welded steel water tower / tank to replace the 1 million gallon standpipe that was demolished. We're going to install the new structure at the same location of the previous unit. At the left is the site where it's going to be installed. The right is the rendering of the proposed tower. It's going to be 162 feet high. It's cost $9 million estimated. Next slide, please. A new potable water well. We're going to construct a new potable water well to replace well number 16 that collapsed. Existing well to the left is the one that's going to be abandoned, and on the right is the new location for the new water well, which we're going to call 16A, and it's going to be located at the water purification plant. The estimated cost is $4 million. Next slide. This one is really near and dear to my heart. It's the city was awarded $33 million for the North Shore Critical Infrastructure Project due to FEMA Public Assistance Program. It's called the 404 HMGP program. The project includes the installation of a cantilever steel bulkhead to the base flood elevation to protect against the 100-year storm and coastal erosion, new water mains, sewer mains, road restoration, and stormwater pump station. On the right is a rendering of what the shoreline is going to look like afterwards with a new bulkhead, and on the left is what it looks like now, which is pretty bad. The total cost is approximately $33 million. Next slide. Long Beach Wastewater Treatment Plant Consolidation Project. Nassau County and the City of Long Beach are working collaboratively to convert the city's wastewater treatment plant to a pump station that will ultimately transport all Long Beach wastewater directly to Bay Park for treatment. The proposed pump station, a 19,300 linear foot, 24-inch diameter force main, will transport wastewater from the Long Beach to Bay Park wastewater treatment plant. The project's comprised of two components. The force main construction, which is on the left. It shows the basic route, which is going to go through the hassocks across Reynolds Channel. And on the right is the location of the pump station conversion, which is the bottom left of the right picture. Both projects are 100% designed and ready to be bid. Construction is scheduled to be completed by September 2024. The project costs approximately $100 million. This is one of the most important regional environmental beneficial projects to be undertaken in the area. Next slide, please. Ice and marina hazard mitigation. The scope of the work is to dry flood-proof the exterior of the building, replace the front entry and the windows, repair the east wall of the building, install a stop block system to mitigate flooding at all entrances. The total cost is $912,500. The contract is Premier Builders, and they're working on this project as we speak. Next slide, please. City Hall facade rehabilitation. The scope is repointing, brick replacement, lintel replacement, repair cracks. Construction is scheduled to commence March 1st, 2022. In February 2022, we're going to be erecting scaffolding around the entire building, a sidewalk bridge that is, and that's going to be done in February 2022. The total cost is $689,550. The contractor is Related Services, Inc. Next slide. Drainage improvements includes drainage improvements on National Boulevard south of Park, the intersection of Riverside and Pine, and Park between New York and Nevada. On the left is National Boulevard before. The right is a plan drawing showing the proposed improvements. It's essentially going to mirror Edwards Boulevard. The contract is J.R. Cruz. Enclosure of open air basins at the water treatment plant. The open air basins shown are utilized as part of the treatment process at the plant. Alum is added as a flocculant to cause iron particles to settle in open air basins. Unfortunately, the basins are less than 100 feet from the adjacent road, leaving it vulnerable to vandalism. The enclosure will protect the city's water supply. The left is what the current plant looks like, and on the right is the proposed enclosure. The cost is $997,000. The contractor is RJ Industries. City Council Chamber Rehabilitation. I know everybody loves these beautiful wooden chairs and benches because they're so comfortable, okay? But we do have a plan to remodel this area. We want to put a new ceiling, new floors, new seating, and upgrade the visual and audio systems. Total cost approximately $300,000. Next slide. Ice arena roof. We have funds in the capital budget to rehabilitate the ice arena roof. We're going to repair and recoat the roof, replace all gutters and leaders. The total estimated cost is $500,000, and funding is in the capital budget. Sand filter rehabilitation. Our intent is to rehabilitate 10 high-pressure sand filters at the water purification plant. We're going to paint the exterior of all the tanks, replace the sand, and rehabilitate the inner workings. It's about $100,000 per filter, so it's about $1 million project. We plan to do 2 per year, or $200,000 per year. Next slide, please. Road reconstruction, Doyle Street, East Chester to Pine. The scope is complete reconstruction of the road, including new curbs, sidewalks, water sanitary sewer mains, ornamental streetlight poles, and landscaping. Designs being performed in-house by my staff. The total cost is $1 million. Construction scheduled for 2022, and that's a photo of the condition that I get calls regularly about. It is really bad, and we're gonna take care of it. Next slide. Water main upgrades in the walks. The existing 4-inch diameter water mains traverse behind the homes in the walks. The mains are undersized by today's standards. Mains are 75 to 100 years old. The scope is to install new 8-inch diameter water mains in the roadway on West Walnut and West Olive between New York and Lindell. Disconnect all homes from the 4-inch diameter water mains. Install new 1-inch diameter copper services for each home. And new services will be connected to the new 8-inch diameter water mains. And we want to abandon all existing 4-inch diameter water mains that are currently aligned in the rear of the homes and the walks. Estimated cost is $3.5 million. Next slide. And thank you very much. That's any questions? Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Donna and I were discussing earlier, which is just really fantastic news. One of the slides I put up was the North Shore Critical Infrastructure Protection Project, which was approximately a $33 million project. Well, the project was almost recently derailed because Basilico, the general contractor, basically said they couldn't hold their bid price and they wanted an additional $5 million. So that would bring the price tag for the whole entire project to $38 million. So we reached out to FEMA and Dishes, and we found out today that they were going to revise the BCA, and we may be eligible to up to $40 million. So I think, we'll really get this project moving, which is great. Okay.
Our next speaker will be Patty Bourne. She's going to talk about a grant that we applied for.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Patty Bourne, as Donna said, And this PowerPoint was presented by the city manager, Donna Gayton, Tyler Huffman, and myself recently to the state. And first, I'd like to thank the city council and our city manager for their support for the expansion of economic development opportunities. We have a lot of potential to expand what we're doing to support the city and make the downtown more viable. So this was a program called Downtown Revitalization Initiative, which is a program of the New York State Empire State Development. Their Long Island office is where we did our submission. So we applied a couple of months ago, according to their requirements, and I'll be talking a little bit about what we propose to do in a minute. And we were thrilled to be selected to make an actual presentation. It meant that of the X number, they wouldn't tell us, the X number of proposals that were submitted to them, they selected Long Beach as one of the ones they wanted to hear more of. So we had a Zoom call with the people on the committee. They're volunteers who are leaders on Long Island in the development community. And it was a very good meeting, and that's how come we put together this report. So it's not a report about what my department's doing, it's a report about what the city is doing to support economic development and some exciting ideas for the future. And maybe we have the next slide. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm so slippery tonight. So the next slide is, the next one should be about what makes, I think the one before, Dave. Thank you. That's terrific. So I think all of us and everyone who are listening in tonight knows that Long Beach is a very special place. But we just did share some of the reasons why we think our city is very special. And we were sharing ideas that relate to the guidelines, because there were like 10 guidelines we had to respond to. So these are things that responded to their guidelines, the state's guidelines, because the same guidelines for all of New York State. We're highly compact and walkable, of course. We have a vibrant year-round regional destination. We're the 6th busiest Long Island Railroad station in Nassau and Suffolk counties, which a lot of people don't realize. We have a lot of traffic in and out of our train station. We have regional connections to New York City and JFK Airport. And our central business district is a primary downtown for the entire Barrier Island, including nearby Island Park. We're a year-round regional destination due to the proximity of so many exciting features, including, of course, our beaches, our boardwalk, our restaurants, shops, boutiques, and farmers market. The city's multimodal, I'm sorry for using that word, multimodal means different types of transportation, but our Center for Transportation right next to City Hall has connections, of course, to New York City, as well as JFK via the railroad. So we look at our central business district, including our innovation district, as vibrant and the epicenter of the city. The next slide, please. So here's our short and succinct vision. It's to enhance the central business district by expanding the city's Complete Streets initiative, encouraging smart development, and supporting existing and new businesses. Next slide, please. So here's a map. Here's the map, thank you, that shows the area. The area is, if you can see it, it's where it's outlined in blue. So it includes the area from Long Beach Boulevard going west to it's not okay, to Lafayette, and it includes the area from Park Avenue north to the Bayfront. And most of it is along Park Avenue, but we did include the areas along Long Beach Boulevard as well. It includes our central business core, the innovation district along Long Beach Boulevard, and includes over 180 businesses of course, City Hall, the police and fire departments, a low moderate income neighborhood to our north, and what we call, as I said, the multimodal center, defined as including the train station, the county and city bus depot, bicycle racks, our taxi stands, and our parking garage. Next slide, please. So then we talked to them about the investments made and will be made in the central business district. From the private side, private investment, not city investment, we have Bridgeworks, which many of you probably know, which is a co-working center, very adaptable on Long Beach Boulevard and quite unique. It's different than most centers. And it's doubled in size since it opened in about 2015. We have what's called a new light manufacturing facility, the brewery called Bright Eye Brewery on Park Avenue, which does both wholesale and retail sales of beer. They make the beer there and they sell it to the public and also sell it to people who take it away to other facilities. And in reading about economic development, one of the recommendations that is being made across the country is the idea of light manufacturing. Not anything that's offensive or environmentally upsetting, but something that, like the brewery, that you don't really know what's there. It's like another retail store, but it provides innovative jobs and it provides an expansion of the business space by using up available space in our retail downtown. The next project that we have wanted to highlight are, we have 3 projects right here on Park Avenue which are in development by the private sector. It's the former Citibank building, the former hospital administrative building, which is becoming housing to both of those to the east of us on the north side of Park Avenue, and then on the south side, it's the former nuclear cleaner site, which would be created into retail space and a dancing performing arts center on the 2nd floor. So these exciting projects that show different developers' investment in our downtown, because they see it as part of the transit-oriented development, and it's a walkable downtown. And then the last project, which has been in the news in the last year or so, is the $365 million redevelopment of the 40-year-old superblock along the Boardwalk, which is being done by Engel Berman. In terms of public investment, and a lot of these things were covered in detail by Joe because they're done by DPW, is a $2.2 million complete streets redesign of Edwards Boulevard, which was funded, as Joe said, by New York State DOT. The $3.3 million streetscape redesign of National Boulevard underway for drainage with GOSER support. The $2.5 million available from Complete Streets funds through the New York State Department of State for Park Avenue, which has not started yet, but should start in the next year. And we have funds from HUD through Nassau County Office of Community Development to redo the area around City Hall and the train station, something called transit-oriented development, to make it healthier, safer, easier to move around, better information for people coming to the multimodal center, the train center, City Hall, etc., and to make it look more attractive, to provide safety improvements along the roadways, because we don't have clear crosswalks at this point, and we've been working closely on that one, of course, with DPW, who's taking the lead, and the police department, so that it's a comprehensive approach. The property that Joe talked about, where the wastewater treatment plant currently is, by that closing down and becoming a pump station as the effluent is pumped over to Bay Park, it makes 5 acres of property along the bayfront available for redevelopment. And that's an exciting opportunity for the city to look at what can happen there. And it adds, and the value is added because of the work of Joe and Nassau County in providing the cleanup, because we're not going to be dumping the effluent anymore, discharging it into our Reynolds Channel, into the bayfront, either from Bay Park, which is the county facility, or from our facility, because it's going to be moving over to Cedar Creek and out to the ocean. Therefore, within a couple of years, right, Joe, we should see much, much cleaner bay water, so that it's going to be closer to what we had historically in the past and be open for other recreational opportunities. Thereby, the property along the bayfront becomes even more valuable and provides opportunities for exciting new adventures and economic development. And Joe talked about the bulkheading going on here, the critical infrastructure bulkheading, which is important because by mitigating flooding and making the area safer, it makes the whole downtown as well as North Park, of course, and the infrastructure facilities along the bayfront. It makes it safer, more inducive, and more attractive for economic development. Just briefly, our upcoming planning activities. The comprehensive plan, we're taking a totally new look at where we should be going with the support of the city, and we hope to be recommending a planning consultant firm to the City Council in the very near future to start this effort. We'll go out, as our city manager says, and talk to everyone in the community and get their input so that the plan reflects for the next 5 years, the next 20 years, what residents want to see in the city and find ways to make that happen. And along with that, after the plan is done, which should be done by next spring, late spring, then we're going to take a look at zoning. We've applied for some funding to update our zoning, which has not been updated in 35 years. It needs to be brought up to date and become modernized, as well as look at resiliency issues. The next slide, please. So briefly, here are the two concepts that we proposed. And these are, I want to stress the word concepts, because you can say, well, do we want to do exactly that? Well, the idea is we had to tell them something that made sense about what we'd like to see, but if we are awarded the funding, which we hope we are, then there will be planning efforts working with the city council and the residents of the community to make sure that whatever proposed makes sense for everyone and everyone's satisfied with it. So the idea of the first transformative project is the redevelopment along Park Avenue. You know, Long Beach is a unique regional destination for the whole South Shore. And with the DRI funds, if we get them, what we'd like to see is new businesses open up, the creation of new jobs, and to strengthen our year-round economy. And you can see on the slide, we want to have attractive economic investment by improving walkability, accessibility, and safety on Park Avenue, which we all agree would be terrific. Includes reconfiguration of the parking malls, introduction of bike lanes, traffic calming, lane reduction to make it safer for everyone, redesign crosswalks and signals, pedestrian bicycle connections to the bayfront and to the ocean front going north-south, electric vehicle charging stations, which are becoming more and more attractive and desirable, of course, landscaping, streetscaping, and beautification. The project, of course, would leverage the grant funds we've already obtained from other sources, such as the DOS money and the net money from Nassau County, and the funding request is $20 million. The way the program works is that the governor's office provides up to $20 million this year to each region. Long Island, meaning Nassau and Suffolk counties, is one region, so they'll be either they'll be selecting one community to get the $20 million or two communities to each get 10. Of course, we would, of course, ask for the 20 million. We think we deserve it, and we think we need it. The second and last project is improvements, transit-oriented development improvements around the railroad station to enhance the area. So we talked about having a small amount, relatively small amount of money to do work, and we're grateful to have that. But if we had a lot of money, we could make the area so much better. And looking at mixed income and mixed use redevelopment of underutilized property around the train station, a new performing arts and cultural space, a redesigned crosswalks and sidewalks and signals, electric vehicle charging, landscaping, and investments at the multimodal center. Now, thanks to Senator Kaminsky, he pursued, I would say about 2 years ago it was announced, that he pursued getting the Long Island Railroad train station here in Long Beach into the MTA Long Island Railroad's capital plan. Like our plan, the MTA has a large capital plan, and they prioritize different projects. So he got it in there so that Long Beach's station, which I think we all agree is well overdue to be redone. So the idea would be that the MTA funds would pay for the actual train station and the access to the platforms to be redone, because that's their property, it's not city property. So they would do that, but the idea would be that we would do it in concert with them with the same design, so it would be seamless and it would be convenient and make the entire area work better for everyone. And at the same time, we have FTA money that has been improving our bus depot. And as Joe said, we just had the parking garage redone. So it would be terrific to get all this done, and we have other monies we can leverage, as we talked about before. And again, just emphasizing, it's the 20 million total that we have requested. And last but not least is public support. That was very important for the application, and we're very grateful to our elected officials, Senator Kaminsky, Legislator Ford, and Assemblywoman Miller, for providing letters of support and supporting the applications. We know strong support from them, and we thank them very much. The Chamber of Commerce has been very actively supporting us. Concerned Citizens of North Park has been supporting it, and we've also talked to civic groups and residents and thanked them for their support and their ideas. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Patty. What the purpose of this was to let you know, the first two presenters talked about different grants that we have received. This is how we go about getting grants, and this $20 million grant proposal, we are part of the finalists. Our last presenter is Ina Resnick, our comptroller.
Good evening again. So I will try to very briefly address the preliminary results of operation for fiscal year 2021 that ended on June 30th of this year. These results are not audited, but at this point we feel comfortable to sharing these results with you tonight. City of Long Beach General Fund budgeted revenue and other financing sources, the total of that was $83.6 million. The City of Long Beach projected actual revenue for this year, including other financing sources, is $86.3 million. So this is a positive variance of approximately $2.6 million, which is a great news for fiscal year 2021. While we are saying that, it's also important to notice that included in this $83 million budget was $2.7 million that we've borrowed for the retirement payouts. So it's not all earned through the recurring revenue. It's also including borrowed money from, I'll address it later, but probably you can say it often enough that this is the practice that's been in place for many years, and once you go down that path, it's very difficult to go back, especially in times of COVID. So that's something that we aspire to stop this practice, to come up with the rational approach that, if not completely avoided in the next year budgets, then reduce it over the years, over the short period of time, to stop relying on that. Budget to actual positive variance is also mostly due to non-recurring revenue items, which is very important. Not all revenue comes to you the same. In common terms, there is a difference between receiving a bonus and receiving increase in your salary. So what the material favorable variances were in state aid per capita and sales tax. That's a result of very conservative budgeting that we did for the 2021 budget. And also we received federal aid in ARPA, which is American Recovery Plan funds, and also CARES money through the FTA. Recurring revenue, on the other hand, was about $1.6 million under budget, and it was mostly in the departmental revenue, and mostly due to COVID, but we're also looking to see if it's not a new normal, and we'll do a deep dive into the revenues for the next fiscal year 2023 budget to make sure that we budget conservatively, and if the new normal, because of COVID, actually was established, we'll build it into the budget. Next slide. Thank you. So this is just an example of how revenue, actual revenue came under the budgeted revenue, just several departments, several revenue categories that experienced the most material negative variances. Ambulance charges, we got $200,000, over $200,000 less than was budgeted, and you would think that with COVID it's counterintuitive, right? But people actually were very reluctant to be going to the hospitals, and the volume of the calls and the revenue both went down. I think other categories are pretty much self-explanatory. People are not using public transportation. We couldn't really, this fiscal year actually has a couple of summers in it. So it's the summer of July 1st through the Labor Day of 2020, and then Memorial Day through June 30th of 2021. So as you know, a lot of recreation events and activities were really not going on last summer. By last summer, I mean it's fiscal year, it's summer of 2020, which is our fiscal year 2021. Next page, please. So while we're looking at that positive variance in revenue, things to remember for us to take away is that we need to strive to budget for separation and retirement fees through operating budget and eliminate the reliance on borrowing for this recurring cost. Evaluate all recurring revenue categories for next fiscal year budget to ensure that estimates are realistic and that recurrent expenditures are covered by recurring revenues. And plan for the long-term fiscal stability and structural budget balancing. Next slide, please. Okay, after revenues come expenses, or before revenues come expenses, but they go together. So City of Long Beach General Fund budgeted expenses and other financing uses for fiscal year 2021 were $83,256,837. And the city actually ended fiscal 2021 under that with a little bit over $80 million of expenses, positive variance of approximately $3.1 million. Again, it's a great news for 2021, a good point to start. Structural impact, city needs to continue its effort to control expenditures across the board. Next slide, please. So the takeaway for the expenditures is to continue monitoring personal and other than personnel costs to ensure that the city continues to operate under fiscal austerity approach. We've established the Essential Spending Committee that meets every week. Overtime reports are also generated. They're shared with the departmental managers, with the city manager, and with the city council, who are actively monitoring this cost and spending for the city. Next slide, please. So once you take expenditures out of the revenues, you get to the net change in the fund balance. Based on the preliminary reports provided by my office, our fund balance had increased by about $6 million, a little over $6 million compared to what was budgeted of about $374,900 in a fiscal year 2021 budget. This is the result of actual revenues being over budgeted revenues by $2.6 million and actual expenditures under budgeted expenditures by $3.1 million. City budgeted to use approximately $4.7 million of that fund balance in fiscal year 2022 budget. Next slide. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about this $4.7 million appropriation of the fund balance because in November I will ask City Council, I will present the resolution to amend fiscal year 2022 budget. When it was being prepared, we were under the impression that the full amount, 100% of the ARPA money would be received by 6/30/2021. And we actually only received 50% of it. So it will be reallocation in 2022. I'll ask City Council to approve the reallocation from the fund appropriation to the revenue rising from the federal aid. And that will bring that $4.7 million down to about $3 million. But that still would be a very significant impact on this fund balance of $6 million that we were able to accumulate through the end of 2021. Next slide, please. So this chart shows where the revenues are coming from. We get about 54% from the real property taxes. This, for any municipalities, this would be the most stable revenue source. Other sources are not as stable. The long-term debt proceed is something that we need to move away completely. That's what we borrow for this operation pay. About 19% come from the departmental income. That's a very volatile source, and that's about 1/5 of our overall revenues. Next slide, please. So this chart, you could tell I like the pie charts. Next chart shows, this chart shows expenditures by category, because like I said, it's important to match recurring revenues with recurring expenses and vice versa. And this shows different expense categories, and you could see that if you could read the category either on the chart or on the table to the left, we spend a lot of money and the huge chunk of our overall budget on the expenses that are absolutely not discretionary. There's a lot of payroll is absolutely not discretional. We have bargaining unit agreements, and we budget based on the provisions of those agreements, and then our overtime and temporary salaries. They're really unavoidable because we're a seasonal business, right? So we have to rely on the sources of labor for the times that when we have peak in the summer. 14% of our overall budget goes towards medical, dental, life, disability, and other insurances. 2% goes towards FICA. That I have to say that this year only 2% went towards FICA because we took advantage of the provision in the CARES Act that allowed us to defer 50% of it until future years. Retirement system contributions are huge, and so on and so forth, with all other expenditures being like 16%. So very small percentage of our expenditures are truly discretionary without either affecting the employees of the city or the quality of life and the services that we provide to the residents. Next page, please. Slide. So this slide shows historical budgeted revenues and expenditures, as well as other financing sources and uses, and changes in fund balance. Goes back to 2012 when I started in 2019. The fund balance was $285,000 in the general fund. As a result of the negative, right, the loss of $2.8 million, almost $2.9 million in 2019. That's the third row from the bottom, the very right cell. So city had heavily in the past relied on the borrowing for operating activities of the city, whether it would be through the borrowing for the separation pay or through borrowing. City did $12 million of borrowing in 2014 because it was a deficit financing. The city wouldn't be able to meet its obligation if the state would not allow city to actually go out and borrow for operating expenses. We have somewhat of a healthy end of 2021, and I think that's the goal of city manager, myself, and all the department managers are on the same page that will strive to adhere to this fiscal austerity, budgeting and control expenses the best way that we can. And that concludes my presentation.
That concludes the manager's report.
All right, so much for a short meeting tonight.
Just so that everybody knows, the PowerPoint presentations will be on the agenda. On the website tomorrow.
We'll make a motion to close the meeting.
Me.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delury.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes, and thank you for an amazing city manager's report. That was excellent, and it really shows you that the city is really It's really the staff that makes this city run. And so let's all remember that. Thanks.
Thank you.
President Bendo.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, well, he's getting set up for good and welfare. I guess I didn't expect all that either, but I guess I hope the takeaway everyone's got from that, those of you that stuck around for the whole thing, is that there is a lot of stuff going on, a lot. You know, we're addressing the long-ignored infrastructure. We're taking strides to get us back on a good fiscal path. We're looking ahead with economic development, and we're bringing our police into the 21st century. So there's a lot going on. So just in case I think everyone knows, 3 minutes for good and welfare, and first up is Mr. Paganini.
Ron Paganini, Long Beach. I'm not here on a good note. Everything else was pretty good, but this has to be said. Now, I'm going to give a quick case history on employee time theft. From 2015 to 2019, this employee, can't name him, never signed in or out on the timesheet. For 5 years, his supervisor allowed it against city mandate that all employees shall sign in and out. He made at least $500,000, but was basically MIA on the radar. Saying that, the update on these two employees, one is still working without consequences, and the other one's job was abolished, and he refused work, but he can come back to work someday with no consequences. Let me continue. Tonight I want to start off with the city manager's comments of last meeting. She said she doesn't operate on my time frame. She meant it's way too early to make a decision on this case. Maybe she forgot. I've been working with her and President Bendo for 18 months on this matter. Maybe not everybody knows up there, but this is what happened. Also, I produced 2 employee witnesses to the fact. Also, from October of 2018 till November of 2019, I was blowing the whistle to the last administration, who covered it up, of course. You can't make this up. I guess 3 years is not enough for the city. And clear evidence that I found means nothing. City manager doesn't want it. I can't believe this administration is also covering up. My friends, the people that I ran with and knew of this for quite a while, quite a few years. I am sick over this. I really am sick even to come here to let the people know what happened. I and many taxpayers thought this council had integrity. I was proud of this council. I really was. I was proud to be with them, to run with them, to make them win. And what do? There is no integrity so far. Now, I must ask the council if they would like, for the record, to see the evidence I have. To see it. I know my time's up.
Yeah, so Ron, why don't you stick around afterwards?
Yeah.
We'll chat, and we'll look at it.
I don't have it on me.
Oh, okay, so we'll set up a
Well, why don't we do that?
Stick around. There's not a lot of speakers.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
I just want to make a comment. No one can say what I meant. I know what I meant.
I meant.
And also, it is my understanding, and for a fact, you and I had a conversation with the union president of CSEA. And so you know that, yes, we met at CSEA, and I'm sure John Mooney will come and talk about the meeting we had. And so what I said to you, sir, was that we move based on the information that we have, and some of the complaints you had, we addressed it. I talked to John Mooney afterwards, and you failed to tell the public that some of the things that you were complaining about had been addressed. And it was addressed with the union, and we moved forward. Because no one called you to tell you that we had addressed some of the issues, that's not what we do. We don't talk about personnel to others. So I suggest that you come back and you can set up a meeting with myself and the CSEA president, because every employee that you discuss is represented by the union. Thank you.
Well, can I say something? Can I rebuttal this or just leave it alone? Huh? Met him? In person?
Or talk to him.
Last week? Yeah.
All right, good. Yeah. Yeah, I'm good for now. Yeah, my name's Gerald Cymbalski. I'm a 33-year resident of Long Beach. I've been living at 522 Shore Road, and I own a co-op apartment there. It's a small place, good for me. And I'm not also not too thrilled with the civil service community. I am a retired New York City Transport Worker Union shop steward, and I was very close to everyone at the Transit Authority, presidents to the people mopping the floors. Everybody knew who I was. Not many can say, okay, not many people can say they, one had the help of the union. Anyway, down here in Long Beach, I'm having trouble with a bus driver, and I reported him. I took, when he went over to the Nassau County Division of Human Rights, and we got not enough evidence to proceed. I've come back, and now I find that he's been given a full-time position. The manager of the bus department, who knows this, is also protected by civil service, is now an administrator. And she knew that this man made this statement to me. He admitted to her that he did it. He actually said it twice, called me fat, white, and, inappropriate. Anyway, then we had the coronavirus breakout. So I had a problem with the 911 call where an EMT took my keys from me while I was on the gurney being taken to the hospital, and they went into my apartment without my permission. I come back, the place looked like it was a drug search or something. I have nothing to hide in there. It's not well kept. I can't hire people during the coronavirus. I'm disabled. I provide work to the community. Somebody needs money, they want to, clean the apartment, to come on over. Anyway, I can't find people to help me. Agencies cannot, right now, find help for me to get home care attendants. They're not out there, these small paying jobs. Well, anyway, I come back after the 911 phone call on September 14th, 2020, after the keys were taken from me, and the place was, everything was moved around, and my walkers were away from the door, and I called up and, talked to Scott Gibbons about it, and what's going on, how come the building department came in and inspected my apartment. I said, okay, it's dirty. So anyway, I caught the coronavirus. I couldn't do much for the next couple of weeks. I got clearance, cleaned the apartment up, had a crew come in, and then had 2 more people come in, both witnessed by Nassau County employees that my apartment was cleaned. Yes. All right, and okay. All right.
So they'll help him? Yeah, okay, so they'll talk to him and get him what he needs. Okay, Roy Lester.
Roy Lester, Long Beach. I'll make it real simple. I know I've come up several times and asked about getting the presentations that we're going to get ahead of time so we can follow them. Nobody can see them. The people on commanding officers certainly can't see them. And I was told you would look into it, but there must be a reason we can't get them ahead of time. How come? What's the reason?
The reason today was the staff was still working and updating it. And so that's why I said that it would go on the website this evening. As we were going through, looking at everything that had been done, we were making sure that everything was correct.
But Donna, do you realize none of us can see the numbers? None of us can see what's being
I
presented?
apologize, Roy, for us trying to, I apologize for you not being able to see it. That's why we said it would be on the website tomorrow, and that's why the staff got up to present the way they did. We are and we will continue to try to make things better to present to the public, but we went and did this tonight, and that's why the staff was presenting and talking verbally, and the slides will be up tomorrow.
Okay. It just helps us if we can see the slides
I understand.
while they're speaking. Thank you.
I understand.
Okay, Nora Egan. Okay, Eileen Hessian. She's gone. Okay, then that was it, folks. So thanks for joining us, and everybody have a good night.